All right, and we are back here on Moneyline, and we had to make a quick switch in personnel. Frank just wasn't getting the job done, so we had to go to the backup, the man himself, Coach Schuman. Coach Schuman, thank you again for being here on Moneyline. We have missed you desperately on here.
I try not to be a backup too much, but in this case, I'll accept it.
I know, I know I didn't do you justice calling you the backup. We were talking about the week 0 season in college football and Clemson. Dabo Sweeney has been reluctant to go into the portal. He's been reluctant to spend money on players. And I think that if he doesn't change his ways, his time is limited. Now, he signed a monster contract. He's won 2 national championships. They've been a force to be reckoned with. They always have been. But they just were embarrassed Sunday night. And if that doesn't, I mean, Georgia's Georgia, but if they don't change their ways, if he doesn't change his philosophy,
Yeah.
you know that the college football, the college presidents and alumni have no problem dropping $80 million to run you out of town like they did with Jimbo Fisher.
Yeah.
Do you think that Dabo Sweeney is safe? Do you think like even this year he could end up in trouble and getting dismissed, especially with them trying to join the SEC?
Yeah. Well, I think that last statement you just made is the biggest part. They want to get into the SEC.
Yeah,
They want to be in a position that the SEC can't turn them down. And they'd be giving up a lot of present money with the ACC to get to the money that they need from the SEC. So, and there may be a time where they will not be able to get the payoff, to go to the SEC. So, um, I think that's a huge issue. I think, if you look at their record, they won the national championship in 2018, 15-0, right?
correct.
Then they were in the national championship game in 2019, 14-1, 2020. That was COVID year, 10 and
Right.
10-2. 2021, 10-3. 2022, 11-3, and then 2023, 9-4, 4-4 in the ACC.
ACC,
Tied
that was a drop off.
sixth. Okay. So I think that is really a huge issue in the transfer portal era. His principles, I get his principles, but it's a situation where you're going to have to develop players. But the bigger issue is not that. The bigger issue is that players are still going to leave. So you're replacing players that are leaving from your school with players that are freshmen. And so that's a huge now.
Exactly.
So if it was a situation where, if it was on principle in the old way, okay, player leaves, you replace with a freshman, it's 1 or 2 guys, a handful of guys. But if you get 15, 20 guys leave, I'm not even just talking about just starters. Obviously, you can lose starters or guys that are quality backups. But the issue is who's the guys that are running your scout team are great players, right? So now
Yeah.
you're replacing them with freshmen who are not at that level even yet. Okay, in a lot of cases, they could be all Americans, but that doesn't mean they're as mature as a disgruntled junior scout team player. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, very
uh,
true.
that's just the reality of it. So I think that's a big issue. Could he get run out of town? Yeah, I think there's so much money that it doesn't matter.
I guess nobody's safe, but I mean, you're right. There's too much money involved.
There's too much money. If he goes 9-4 again, 4-4 in the ACC, he's probably going to be gone.
Yeah, the ACC overall, if you watch them over the weekend, really, I mean, didn't impress I would say. I mean,
Well, they're
they
weaker of they're the weakest.
yes,
They're not SEC or Big Ten.
of the Power 5, 4 supposedly. They would definitely be the weakest.
And then and in the Power Four, there's really two conferences that are
Yes, it's
mega
the
powerhouses, and two conferences that have teams in it that are powerhouses, and then solid teams throughout. The big two conferences are the Big Ten and the SEC. Period.
yes,
End of story.
end of story. And everyone else is just behind them.
Yes. Now the Big
And the
12 is not. It's not a bad. They're both. Big 12 and ACC are probably equivalent. And they have teams that are in the mix there. In the ACC, you got North Carolina. Well, I would say Florida State, but Florida State's in almost a similar situation
that's the other one.
for
Yeah.
different reasons. Yeah, I mean they lost to Boston College.
Oh,
So
and 2.
yeah, I
I
mean
don't even know
that's
how that happened. They played in week -0 to get their first loss to
it.
Georgia Tech.
I know, right, right. Is and that was in Ireland.
Ireland. They go to Ireland.
Now is that a situation where you get a situation where Florida State, if Mike Norvell loses this year after being in the playoff,
They were they should have been, yeah.
they
They were
they
undefeated
had
last
the
year.
opportunity to be in the playoff. They're the one team that was left off, right? So,
Correct.
and so they were undefeated at the time, I believe, right? They were undefeated
Correct.
because a quarterback left, Jordan Travis left, and or it was
Yeah, a lot of people jumped ship and they had guys go to the NFL. It was a huge turnover there.
yep. So they were left off the playoff. So here's the interesting thing about all that. If Mike Norvell loses or has a middle of the road year, I don't know, 7-5, 8-4 type year,
Yeah.
uh, 8-4 is not road, but 7-5, 7-5, 6-6 year. Does he get fired? And does Dion come in as a head coach at Florida State? What do you think?
I think that's the perfect fit, and all along, that is what I thought Dion would wait for, at Jackson State. I wouldn't have ever pictured him jumping to take the Colorado job. Like, I understand that you're at Jackson State and you have an opportunity to move to a FBS school, but I thought there were better openings that he could have strategically planned on and waited for, and Florida State was one of them. Florida State had been gradually declining under Norvell. I think he was in his 3rd year at the time. Last year was just a blip on the radar when they went undefeated, and they didn't do it with enough style points to even get in the playoffs. It's the only time it's ever happened. So I think that's perfect fit. And it could have happened when Dion made the decision. They could have decided to move on from Norville then. But Florida State made an investment to upgrade their facilities, upgrade their stadium, put money into the program. And that was the biggest thing Norville had complained about. And that was the biggest reason Jimbo Fisher left. Jimbo Fisher left because he was disgusted that he got no support from the administration. His facilities were subpar, and they weren't fundraising. And it's the same thing we talk about with UConn. It's you have the way you structure your college football team, your program, you almost have to do it like an NFL organization, right? And have a front office
Yeah, oh, you
with a
have to have a
general
front office.
manager, and
Most of
you
them,
got
most of them do now
they
have.
do now. Yeah, I saw a general manager. Like, I have no idea. Like, what does a general manager for a college football team do? Are they the ones that monitor the transfer portal? Are they the ones that are like the head of recruiting instead of a recruiting coordinator. The GM is in charge of all that, because that's what I saw that UConn had, and the same thing with the content creators that are on the squad. You see the teams, like you said, that have the most content are the ones that get the most views, get the most engagement. And that was another thing UConn talked about, that they weren't able to get done because um, the engagement hasn't been there. And it's because they're not producing enough content. And if you have three guys in your organization that do that, how can you not produce content?
I think that's a huge thing. So you need that. So the GM basically now is essentially, if you think about an NFL organization,
Yeah,
the GM in an NFL organization oversees player personnel and
correct,
oversees scouting. Okay,
correct,
so scouting recruits to college players.
right.
Player personnel works on trades, free
The
agency,
NFL guys that are available,
that
right?
are available, right? So if you think about
Okay,
college,
right.
college recruiting high school players is the equivalent to college scouting on the NFL. Okay, it's the same thing. So it's high school scouting,
So that's like the recruiting coordinator
right? And
would
then
focus on high
well, they
school.
have a recruiting coordinator for both now essentially,
Oh, okay.
but the transfer portal is the equivalent to NFL free agency, NFL
Okay.
trades, NFL movement.
Yeah.
So that's player personnel, right? So you have that, right? So you have a high school recruiting coordinator or a recruiting coordinator. You have player personnel, oversees all that is the GM at the college level. In recruiting, you might have transfer portal recruiting, high school recruiting, a director. I don't know where they lump JUCO in anymore, but probably with high school. And then you have then you decide, okay, what else is the general manager responsible for, if anything? Probably some level of ops with respect to
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Not the
football,
director, but
not football related ops and
right.
travel, but
Right.
actual ops with respect to the other part of the organization. And then with respect to recruiting, with respect to hosting, with respect to engagement, right? That then the question is what other falls under the GM, right? Because if you try to use the NFL model,
Right.
the NFL model also has after the front office, you also have basically the team management, right? So in team management, you have social media, you have marketing, you have sales, regular business
Correct.
operations, right? Getting people into the stadium, fan engagement,
Sponsorships. Yep.
right? So that's the equivalent to a lot what the athletic department does.
Okay.
In which respect, now that's the hardest part for I think the colleges because the difference between an NFL team, okay, and a college and university with respect to this is the NFL team is only focused on their team with respect to sales, fan engagement, player involvement, community. They're only worried about football, right? An athletic
Correct.
department is doing the same thing, but they're worried about all sports, with football and basketball probably being the driver. But it is
Oh, you're right.
quite possible that for some athletic departments, it's a very, very difficult task to do it well if you don't get the right individuals in, because it still comes down to those individuals. That's where the one thing that's very difficult for an athletic department. Now the question becomes, does that come over to football as a separate thing? So just like in an NFL team, how they have ticket sales, all those different things, sales and marketing, sponsorship, all that stuff done just for football. Is there a third department in the long run? Basically, a CEO.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have a general manager, you have the head coach and his organization, you have the head coach, his organization, general manager, his organization. The general manager right now is technically under the head coach, but
Oh, he is.
it could be in the long run a lateral thing. It could be lateral, but right now he's under the head coach. The
Oh, I did not know that. Okay.
Right. So the way the college runs basically is the head coach is the CEO. Okay.
Right.
and he
Right.
oversees the general manager and then is obviously his coaching staff, right? And the general
Right.
manager does the things that the head coach needs to execute. What I'm saying
Right.
is, does there become a third department? A third department, meaning ticketing, sales, because it's so big football, right? At a lot of these places, fan engagement, social media.
Yeah, it's different than any
Is
other
that a
sport.
third department? And who is the quote unquote
See,
COO, CEO of that department, whatever you want to call it? You know what I mean? So there's really a three-headed monster there within football. And right now, if you
never
were to
thought
lump
of it
it
like
all
that.
together, the head coach is the CEO of all of that, and then is still responsible for could be responsible for coaching on the field. What I think in the long run is you're going to either have the head coach over general manager, and the general manager has a separate silo, and the coach has his coaches underneath him, which is a separate silo, but the head coach is above all of it. And then you have a
Oh, okay.
organization just for football with respect to everything else, which they try to do in the athletic departments with like, sports information director. This guy's the assistant AD in charge of football. Like that's kind of the role, but he's not the same level leader. He's not the same
No, no.
leader, and that is going to evolve now. Maybe the Alabamas of the world already kind of have that without calling it that. I don't know. But that's what's going to happen. And that's how it's going to have to evolve, because basically it's going to be like a small NFL organization. And I wouldn't use the word small because they're probably in the long run, is Alabama going to make as much money? Is it going to be as high a valuable in the football department as the Atlanta Falcons?
Yeah, yeah,
Quite possibly could be as a
yeah.
high
I
value.
mean, you look at the endowment at some of these schools; they're worth more than NFL franchises. The thing that astounds me still is that what we talked about is SMU raising that kind of money in a week, the $100 million.
Right.
That blows my mind. I mean, but that shows who cares about football, the haves and the have-nots. And football really is the only sport that you need a general manager and a marketing promotion side too, because it's not like you need it for track.
Right.
It's not like you need it for swimming. It's
Well, the
not like you
athletic
need.
department can handle every Olympic sport on its
Yes,
own,
yes. Football
and
needs its
then
own silo for that. I
football
agree.
needs their own. Basketball could do it too, but it's a smaller version of it, a
Mhm.
scaled down version. But football organizationally
There's too much money
could be
involved.
similar, could be very, very similar to an NFL organization.
Yeah,
Very, very similar. And I think you may have, if they did that, it did it that way, you basically have your own athletic department for football at these big organizations, right? Football is its own athletic department.
it
And
really is. It really is.
how you structure it can enable it to be possibly an organization on the scale level of like an Atlanta. If you're in the South, if you go University of Georgia, could be similar value, their football organization, to an Atlanta Falcons, to Alabama could be the same thing. A lot of these bigger, now there's tiers, right? So if you think
Yes,
about,
yes.
yeah, if you think about it like soccer in Europe,
Oh, how they have the different leagues and you move
right?
up as you
Premier
win or
League,
lose. Yeah,
Premier League is the NFL,
right.
okay? But there's other leagues that have billion-dollar organizations that are almost as equivalent, like the top England league, right, and so on and
Yeah,
so forth. They're almost they'll have top tier organizations at almost as high a value as some of the Premier League teams, right? And those organizations are their own functioning department in all of those areas, right? And anything short of the Premier League, though, they are the highest, valued organization. Who's the top team in Brazil? Who's the top team in
that's
Spain?
true.
Right.
Yeah.
That is, those are going to be huge. So that's what a Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, a Michigan. That's what they are, man. And I watched, by the way, the I know it's a different topic, but I watched the Connor Stallions.
You watched the documentary?
Yeah,
I
phenomenal.
thought he came off well. I don't I like I liked him. I thought he was likable. I didn't think he was
I
a
like
jerk.
him. He's like I thought his father hit it on the head. He was a military guy. He um, was a savant to an extent, highly intellectual,
Yeah,
uh,
he was a high IQ guy.
and very OCD-ish. That's the word.
He was completely OCD.
OCD, dude. He's
He
like,
got
there's
hooked on this.
right. I mean, like, how do you get that elite level of detail? It's amazing because they weren't paying him really that much, right? But
He was a volunteer for 2 years before they paid him.
like, if I watched that, I'd be like, um, head of scouting department for uh, the NFL. I mean, I'd be hiring that guy immediately in some sort of
Yeah.
capacity that requires detailed detailed involvement that most football guys are not that level of intelligence of this guy, right?
No, no.
So he's so detailed. It's like having a programmer, essentially, like a high level engineer as a football coach, right? Like one of these Google programmers that like build these revolutionary systems. That's like having that guy in your football program. And I found what I found that's so fascinating was that he was among the guys that were cheating, essentially, or I don't know if you call it cheating, but
They said it was an
kind of
underground
like
group
it's a
that
gray
does it.
area. Gray
Yeah,
areas.
yeah.
I think the NCAA picked on them, but picked on them because of the success they had. And do I think Ohio State complained? Absolutely, they did. Don't not
100%.
100%.
100%.
100% they complain. Think about your anything that like even go down to like youth sports or high school. Your rival in anything hates you. So if
Yeah,
you do something that they deem unfair, that your rival deems unfair,
they'll
they're
jump
coming
all over it.
in any way capacity. It doesn't matter from the NFL, college, high school, youth, whoever your rival is, they hate you. You know what I mean? So it's a situation where I 100% believe that's the case. But I thought that was an amazing documentary. His detail is amazing. How much he loves how over the top he is for Michigan football
Yeah.
was amazing. I also thought like I loved how he just at first he like kind of hid because he was upset, and really didn't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
Right, this newfound hatred on him.
Well, he was loved by the Michigan people and
But
hated
then
by
when he came
everyone.
out, the Michigan people loved him. It was like I
I
thought that
love
was a really
Yeah,
interesting
we went to the
twist.
playoff games, it was hilarious.
What a twist! But you see how excited he is. He's really like the ultimate fan.
Be passionate, yeah.
He's the ultimate fan who is like
He
unbelievably smart and can
Yeah,
get you any kind of detail you want, with
he got to
respect
live his
to
dream.
it's like he's like the ultimate like yes, it's pretty. So I thought it was a really interesting. I did like him. I felt for him. I also feel like this
Yeah.
there was in his personality. I don't know that he knows the line.
He
So I
he doesn't believe there is a line, I would say.
maybe that's a better statement. You're right. That's a better statement. He doesn't
That's
believe
his thing.
there's a line.
There is no line.
He
You
believes
can do
it's
it all.
all everything goes. Everything goes because everybody's doing it. And and in his head that there is absolutely no line. And he might be right. He might be 100% right. Um and obviously that's what he claims. There's an underground network
Well,
of
he
guys.
said they would all call each other after
Yeah.
games, and they would tell them
Yep.
signals and different things that they picked up. And he said that he had access, which I never knew. We never had access to the actual game footage from the TV copy, where you can see the sidelines. And he is right to an extent. Like, we would have four people signaling, but if you watch, it's not that hard to pick up who's live, who's the one
Yes.
that's live.
Well, yeah,
And
somebody the kids have to look at somebody, right?
I see that I never thought of. That
That's
I never thought of. I never thought of to think of who are the kids looking at, and that makes all the difference. I never thought of that.
And
And
you know what you could do too, probably with the if you match the film you have of the actual game, like the game film you get every week, with the TV copy,
yes,
I bet you can see who exactly they're looking at because when they turn, right? So
you can, yeah,
you can
you
see, and
can.
I bet you there's software that they could draw a line from their sight vision right to the
Right,
exact
too.
person.
Yeah, they probably could do it that way.
They probably can draw an exact line. They probably put the you know how you have the end zone version and the sideline
The
version of
tight and the wide, yeah.
the wide, and then you have the TV copy now, right? So you get
Mhm.
those 3 copies. You put them side by side, draw a line to it, and then hey, Connor goes in. He goes, listen, I know exactly who's doing the signals. Okay, I'm going to try and now decode it. Right, I'm going to decode the signals. And I mean, when he said he had 2,600 signals
Did you see him? He was
that he had
he filmed,
memorized in his head,
yeah, yeah. He
he's
filmed
like a
them, and then he
genius.
memorized them. That's what I couldn't believe. He filmed himself doing all the different signals he saw, and then he matched them with all the different plays that he saw different teams do. So he had a list going into each game. Like if they were playing Purdue, he had a list of the signs that they were going to use
You know
based
what's
on
always been my most
offense
frustrating
and
thing about
defense.
like coach high school uh, and now I coach youth, so it's definitely
Not
10
getting fired.
10 times more frustrating. But
Yeah.
here's was the frustrating thing in high school. So Huddle allows you, for example, okay,
Mhm.
and Exos does the same thing. You put in all the data, okay, all the
Yes.
data, sets, formations, direction,
You can put in anything.
the play
Yes.
they ran. If you tag everything correctly, and
Yes.
then you start sorting and filtering
Correct.
accordingly, you will get a pattern of what the team does in every
Yeah.
play and every down.
You
Every
know it's
play and
coming.
every down. So you essentially, if you have guys that are understand patterns of
Yes.
behavior, like can start to map that. A guy like a Connor Stallions, okay, on your staff, and you could start to map it. What I used to have, my guys who work for me used to be very frustrated because I would come in and I would be like, they would have their game plan, my DCs and stuff, and they'd be like, okay, we're gonna do, you know how we're gonna run this and blah blah blah. And I said, did you look at the patterns? And they'd be like, what do you mean the patterns? I'm like, did you sort and filter and go by play?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like, on this play, on
Second down in the red
this
zone, they play this front, or second down in the red zone, they run this
run this play.
blitz.
And
Yeah.
offense coordinators have huge patterns. So
Yeah.
if you're on, if you run this set, you're running these 2 or 3 plays. Period. End of story. If you're in this set and this motion, you're running these 2 or 3 plays. Period. End of story. Okay. There's only a couple of sets that any coach, and usually one, but only but maybe like a Mike Leach might
Yes.
have
A
like 2 by
tendency
2,
breaker.
2 by 2 and 3 by 1 that they run everything out of no matter what. But
Yeah.
there's only a couple sets that guys run everything out of. Okay. Those are
Correct.
their favorite sets. They run everything out of that. Okay. Other than those 2 or 3 sets, it's probably 2 sets. Yeah. Well, if you go trips right or left, I guess you could say it's like 3. Let's say trips right, trips left, 2 by 2. That would be three sets that they run everything out. Their coaches comfortable running
You're
everything out of those
capable.
sets.
Yes. Yes.
The rest of the sets they run, if they get in any of those other sets,
All tendencies.
that's why you see that shift change on college football, right? In college football, when you see that shift change, like uh these guys go in, this formation shows up,
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
are like, this is the play. This is
This
the
is what's
exact
coming.
play
Yeah.
they're running. It's this play or that play. Everything is this or that, right? And a play to their main play and then a counter to that play because
Exactly.
that's all they can you don't have time to teach anything else, right? You don't have time to teach more
Exactly.
than that.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you think about when you were on offense, right, with Coach Etzel, right? Whatever. I don't remember what you guys ran exactly, but what you do, whatever you had a couple of sets or 2 or 3 sets that you guys could run your whole offense out of, basically, and then you had specific stuff, and the specific stuff was a couple of plays, and that's it.
And they yeah, exactly. And it was the same thing when I coached at Holy Cross. I didn't like when I saw the documentary. It, to myself, I didn't think it was that big of a deal because, like, of what you just said on Exos, if you put in all the data correctly and you can sort it. You can sort it by down and distance. You can sort it by formation. You could sort it by defensive front. You can sort it by field position. So that's what I would do. I would sort it by, coming out from like the 20 to the 50 and, but down in distance, what was their blitz down? First down was their blitz down. First down, something was coming. You knew that if there was a sudden change, they were going to blitz. You knew that if there was a sudden change, some offenses were going to go up top. If they would go for a big play.
Absolutely.
That was the biggest thing. I always knew red zone. Red zone was always specific because red zone the coverages changed.
Right.
There are only 2 coverages you can play successfully in the red zone.
Some
Really,
form of man and some sort of like a
it's a
one
zone.
package match zone
Yeah,
that you could,
yeah, that's it.
and they're going to come out in that, and the blitzes, right, as like they're, in this situation they're going to blitz, right? Okay, well, not only are they going to blitz, but depending on where you're aligned, you know exactly where
Yeah,
they're going
it's
to
coming
blitz
from the boundary or it's coming
or the
from the
field
field.
or what,
Yeah.
right? They have that tendency. Like some coaches, like, oh, okay,
They may bring it up the
bounce,
middle,
you're
but
going to bring a guy off the edge because there's a shorter edge, right? I mean,
correct.
and all these defensive coordinators have tendencies, and then that's why I always think, going back to the NFL, like when Cam Newton's always my example of this. Cam Newton had the MVP year. They went to the Super Bowl and was unbelievable. He was dominant, and then he got in the Super Bowl. Was it Denver Broncos they played? Who did they play? Who did they play?
I thought it was Denver or Seattle.
Or maybe it was Seattle. Whoever they played in the Super Bowl I thought it was Denver, but they figured out exactly what you needed to stop
You're
Cam.
right. It was Denver. It was Denver. Yeah.
They knew exactly because I think Von Miller was the DN. Right? They knew
Yeah. Von
exactly.
Miller. Von Miller, I think, was the MVP. I
Okay.
believe. Yeah.
They changed the NFL. Whoever was their defensive coordinator
Their
and that
DC.
staff, or probably whoever was the minion that really figured it all out and then gave it to the defensive coordinator, right? Basically, they figured out that Cam Newton really was a one look passer, right? And there was a
He
great
was. He was not he never read the full field. He was a half field read guy,
and he was an
and
athlete. Take off.
he was an athlete. They
And
would
he had
give
a
him.
hose for an arm. Hose.
He could make any throw on the field, but it
Hose
was
for an arm.
really a half field read, and he would know pre-snap based on coverage which side he was going to, and it was basically 1, 2, run.
This
That's
or
all
that.
they did with him.
I call it this or that passing game.
This or that. That's it.
That's what I call it. This or that.
Because they couldn't do more with him. They couldn't give him full field reads. They couldn't give him full field read route combinations because it was just too complicated for him. So they made it easy, and they had him use his legs, and he made some big plays off it. And the other thing they did, they had those 2 good running backs that year. They had a good running game, and he was very successful in play action passing. I think that's huge if you can have a play action passing game. So that's why, like, you look at someone like the Bears with Caleb Williams after watching Hard Knocks. I didn't see Caleb Williams as the best quarterback in the draft. I didn't think he was that. But after watching Hard Knocks, he really impressed me with his maturity, the way he handled his business, the way he took control, and it looked like he got better. Like he didn't have boo boo face and get upset when things went wrong. He played through everything, and I Frank and I had this discussion. I said the Bears are a dark horse in the NFC North. Frank doesn't think they're a dark horse. Frank thinks they're in the mix. Can they beat Green Bay? Can they beat Detroit? I don't know, but they got a lot of weapons around them. They got three great receivers in Allen, Moore, and Roman, and they got a running game and they got a tough defense. But like, what was your opinion of Caleb?
Caleb Williams in the preseason, I thought he looked much better.
Didn't
And
he look? Yeah, he looked much better.
I thought look. He's doing the same. My question originally was, can he do the same thing that he did in college, where he buys all this time like Patrick Mahomes does?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I mean, that's a unique skill set, and he looked like he can do it. Like he wasn't.
yeah.
There were times when he was okay, but he still had these dynamic things that I think can be improved upon dramatically as he keeps learning. I was not huge on Caleb Williams,
I wasn't either.
but what I saw is a guy that has some really, really elite skill set and great field awareness. He's not really that fast, but he somehow escapes people. He's elusive.
Yeah, he's nimble, but
Elusive.
he's
Nimble.
elusive.
He's
He's good in
nimble.
the
Nimble's a
pocket.
good word. Nimble's a
Yeah,
really good word. Yeah, nimble, meaning
yeah,
like you can't get your hands on him somehow.
yeah.
I always
He's got
find that
good pocket presence.
that's a unique skill set for a quarterback
Very, very.
because it's not like a quote unquote like you can have guys that are fast runners and
Yeah,
actually if they go up the field, like they start moving up the field, you go, whoa. Like I almost think to me, like Lamar Jackson's an elite runner for a quarterback, but Patrick Mahomes is much better in the pocket in getting away from people.
huge. Yes, very
Like
elusive in the
Lamar
pocket.
is really even though he has great moves and stuff, he's like a linear guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like he can make those moves on the run. I mean, he can shake you and all that kind of stuff.
But he won't stay in the pocket that long and be elusive and
Nimble and elusiveness it's actually a different skill for
yeah.
a quarterback that I like because before it was pocket presence with Brady, like move up in the pocket, avoid the rush
Yeah,
from
right.
his
Where's it coming
ability to
from?
move up and back. Same thing with even Peyton Manning. You didn't sack him that much because they were able to slide up, slide their shoulders, slide their body, so you didn't get a complete shot and they get up a throw because they were big. Same thing with Roethlisberger. They were
Yeah,
big,
yes.
so unless you really got a direct shot, if you got half a man, they could slide you. But these guys, Patrick Mahomes was really the first of this. Show an elite level of nimbleness. You brought that word and elusiveness, not in the way that I say like speed, like Lamar Jackson's the most elusive runner,
Yeah,
but
athletic,
he's a
sure.
down the field guy. These guys are by time guys.
Yeah, they can find their
Aaron
way
Rodgers
through the
was that
pocket.
too when he was young. Aaron Rodgers kind of had that too.
Yeah,
Uh,
he did. He did. He
Maybe
did.
he was really the first, but Mahomes has taken that to a different level.
Yeah, Mahomes will do whatever he can to stay in the pocket. Like he'll fight forever to stay in the pocket before he takes off and runs. And I think that's more important. And that's you're 100% right with Caleb Williams. He has that same skill set. Now that's something I wish like Daniel Jones could do. I wish he could have some more elusiveness in the pocket and be nimble and be able to sit in there and make throws. He's
Right.
a guy, he takes too many sacks and he does not know when to run. And if you have guys like that, especially with the Giants, we were looking at the Giants roster this year. Their roster is much worse than I think it's worse than last year. They definitely downgraded it running back. I know some people love Singletary. I don't think Singletary is going to touch Saquon, even though Saquon had he only had 6 touchdowns last year, but he rushed for 934 yards, and I think he played in 12 games. I know that he's an injury risk, but letting him go the way they did,
Right.
I thought was a sin. Just because
Who are you going to get?
Philly didn't give him that much more to
Right.
get him. Like, it's not like he got $20 million a year. He's still getting around like 12.5 a year. It was a 3-year, $37 million contract. Like, you can't match that. You have the money for it. And now you're going to rely on Singletary, and they have another guy. Their receivers, Neighbors, I think, could be a dude. I hope he is. But otherwise, I think they're going to be in trouble. The last thing I wanted to ask you was about Syracuse. Syracuse got a win over Ohio. Syracuse has done a fantastic job of recruiting New Jersey.
Yep.
Their head coach is full of piss and vinegar, and he could definitely make a difference. What are your thoughts on Syracuse as far as competing in the ACC, especially with the ACC kind of being down this year? Do you think Syracuse could make a run?
Well, the ACC, first of all, does look very average. Fran Brown, as far as a recruiter goes, is probably one of the elite 5
That's what you said. Yeah.
in the whole entire country. So, they got that first win. I think that Syracuse really has an opportunity, and this is just the beginning. I think Fran Brown is going to be great at getting transfers. I think he's going to be great at getting high school guys, especially he'll get his share of Jersey guys that are good. He's got a good staff, and if he has the right guys at offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, then I think he's good. And I think he's more of a defensive guy himself. I can't remember, but I thought he was a defensive guy. But
Yeah.
If he has the right staff from a coaching standpoint, execution standpoint, I think he himself and the people he brings in are going to be able to take care of the recruiting things on an elite level. And that's the
Yeah.
difference. So the quarterback he took that Ohio State quarterback who they were happy to get because obviously Ohio State got another stud, mega stud in, right? So they released their stud and they got a mega stud in. And this guy goes to Syracuse and throws for like 300 yards in the first game.
Which they haven't had in years. I mean, McCarthy played some good games last year, but he was always hurt. Carlos Del Rio Wilson, who was his backup, was atrocious. Like, we could have put your son in, who would have completed more passes than Carlos did. So I think the quarterback position being solidified gives them stability and a real opportunity if they come together and believe. And with the ACC being down, they should be able to stay with the Rutgers. They should be able to play Purdue. They should be able to play Maryland. Those are teams they can win. Are they at the level of Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan? No. Michigan State? Maybe. But if they are able to get 5 wins in the ACC, I would consider it a success.
Yes. And I think that is the he has a unique situation and opportunity.
He does.
I think he's going to capitalize on it. He's going to get a little bit of time to do so, and so I think that's good for him.
And he came out with a bang too.
He came out with a bang. Like I said, dude, listen, if you go around the country, there's a lot of good quarterbacks, but how many elite quarterbacks are there? And so we were talking about UConn getting a guy that's like a third stringer or whatever or maybe second. I don't know. Backup essentially. The quarterback of Ohio State that Syracuse got was the starter.
Right.
He was their starter.
Yeah. Yep.
That is a big difference.
Huge.
Ohio State in the playoff, or maybe I don't remember if they made the playoff or just missed, but they are.
This guy was there. Yeah.
Top 5 or 6 team every single year. And people could complain all they want about how much he wasn't as good as they wanted him to be. He was the starter at Ohio State. You need starters when they transfer in to you. You need to steal starters.
Not the
Okay?
second and third string guys.
Well, my thing is this: Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, okay, USC. Look, these guys that they're getting,
Even Colorado.
they're getting guys that started somewhere else.
Correct.
Start for them, okay? And that is a huge, huge difference between getting that guy and start. So the teams that get that, they're winning 8 games, 9 games. There's only one quarterback for some reason who continues to struggle, and I don't know if it's a confidence thing, but he should not, is Florida State's quarterback, the guy who was at Oregon.
Oh, yeah, the guy back from the injury. Yeah.
He was the best guy in high school, and the only thing I could think of, ukulele or
Yeah. Oh, DJ. Yes.
Okay. So DJ, who was originally at Clemson,
He's at his third school. He was at Clemson, then Oregon State, and now Florida State.
Started Oregon State, did a little better there. Now Florida State. I think my opinion of him is that he peaked, or as like a high school.
I think he did too.
Yeah, I think he peaked, and because he peaked, which can happen, which absolutely
guys,
he was
reached their potential.
Everybody,
yeah.
Which made him really, really, really dominant in high school. He's still so physically superior that he's still able to do the job, but he's not an elite quarterback anymore. He probably will still get drafted incredibly high because
he's
of his
a big,
size.
strong. Yeah, he's a big, strong guy, and teams will see potential in him. That's for sure.
What happens? He's a 10-year backup, right? So that's exactly right.
There.
You got
a there.
6'6" guy that can sling it. That's a 10-year backup. Whether he can, whether he's able to be a starter or not is a different question. But yeah, other than that, that's the big difference. Those guys, if you can get a starter or somewhere, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see too if they do shut the portal down in the spring and only have it in December, because I can obviously see if keeping the portal open in the spring is very difficult for coaches building their staffs, or building their teams.
Well, you know what will happen
is you lose 20 guys, you're screwed. Yeah.
You know what's going to happen if they do that?
What?
Everyone will leave, and they'll just do it in December. Everyone will leave.
There'll be a mass exodus in December.
Like if there's 2,000, you'll see 5,000 in the portal in December. See, every action has a counter.
High school recruiting too, doing that.
Every action has a counteraction, dude.
It does.
It'll be the end of high school.
Ripple effect.
The ripple effect. So absolutely, guys get annoyed with the rosters having to turn over again after the spring. But what happens is if you get rid of that time period and you just say, okay, the only time you could declare to come out is in December, and you need to make
right.
Anybody on the fence is coming out. They're coming out.
And that completely screws up signing day, which is in February. You're right. If anything, they should keep it open in the spring and close the one in December, because at least that gives the coaches more time to prepare.
Correct.
But you're right. If they just go to one and there's a max X.
Well, you know what happened on the back. So if they did what you said, backside of that, you know what they would do?
What?
They would hold back scholarships. They're not.
Wow.
Yeah, well, think about it. If you sign 25 players and you had it in the spring, and then they had a mass exodus in the spring, and and guys who had saved scholarships used them in the spring with transfers instead of giving it to high school kids, they're going to have a huge advantage. So no matter how you cut this,
the high school recruiting is going to suffer.
It's going to suffer. It's really going to be an issue.
Yeah. Well, Dave, we appreciate you jumping in and subbing to finish up Moneyline with us. We appreciate your help and your insight. I think we got some good things accomplished. It's going to be interesting to see week 1 of the NFL. We'll talk about that next week, and we will also have a guest coming on Husky Huddle, which I'm excited about. I think we're going to do that either tomorrow or Friday. That's going to be fun. And hopefully UConn turns it around against Merrimack, and hopefully Syracuse keeps winning. And BC can turn it around and keep going. Bill O'Brien, I think he's doing a good job there. So some of our local teams are doing better.
Yep.
I give them credit. So for the man himself, Dave Schuman, I am Steve Cully. This is 97.9 Unity Radio, Moneyline, the best sports show in Worcester today. The best podcast host in the universe is telling you, remember, when life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Take 2 oranges,